Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Grace Notes with Yorktown Supervisor Michael Grace. We always start off the show, the supervisor likes to start off just letting you know that there's some events coming up that you might want to take advantage of. July 29th is the Lions concert Salute to the Bee Gees.
Right.
So that should really be good. That's part of the summer concerts at the gazebo at DeVito Field and the Community Center in front of Yorktown Stage. And they always start, at 6 p.m. on Sunday, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And if it rains, they go inside, so don't be deterred.
Yeah, right. You can go inside Yorktown Stage. Yeah.
I guess Tom Chaplin's was inside.
Right, because that was
I
a
heard it was
real big
excellent.
downpour.
I was unable to make it, but I heard it was very good.
Yeah, no, he is good. And then, of course, Saturdays we know the farmers market behind the Firehouse on Commerce Street.
Yeah, you know what? And I got a little bone to pick.
Okay.
On that note, there's the New Yorktown Weekly? What's it called?
Yorktown News.
Yorktown News. I guess the editor was going on paternity leave or whatever. Or
Maternity
leave, I should
yes,
say.
yeah.
And I guess as her parting remarks, she kind of did a little editorials, and I thought it was a little, a little rough.
I think you were part of that.
Well, as far as what she had to say about me, I could care less. But what I kind of resented was that she kind of said the farmers market, implying that the food and the produce there isn't locally grown, and which was really not factually accurate because it actually. And I don't like that misinformation because
I think she meant it's not grown in Yorktown.
Well, it is because actually Hanover Arms is now part of has a booth there.
Right.
And
Yes. Right.
and we go there every week to get this guy that sells goat cheese that's out of, I think he is in Bedford. He makes it or something very close, and it's fantastic.
Yeah.
But this kind of imply that nothing there is,
Right.
and I think that is a little bit of a misinformation, and it certainly, the Mays Market people have done incredible job
Yes,
to bring
right.
what I think is a very wonderful event into the town of Yorktown that didn't deserve that criticism, which wasn't factually based. But,
Right.
so,
Okay,
anyway.
well, no, but it's Kathleen Maffetone. I worked with Kathleen. She's very smart, and maybe we should get her on the show. Maybe she'd want to come on the show and talk about it. I don't know.
If they can dish it out. They can get a little.
That's right, yeah. That's for sure. Anyhow, we want to welcome our guest, David Levin, a Yorktowner who is a independent film director, writer, producer. And, of course, everybody knows Tricy Cushner because she's one of the really great, generous citizens in town who volunteers her time for so many different activities and charities and worthwhile causes. And Tricy, what's your role at Alliance for Safe Kids? You're the president. Yes, you're the president, right, and CEO. Okay, right.
How did the Tuesday night go? The Murphys.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
We're actually growing it even more for next week. We have several spin-offs. We had what we're doing at Murphy's. We had spoken to the local restaurants and bars just initially about summer was coming. Please be careful. Just double checking IDs and not having just not being in a situation if it can be prevented as far as having anyone under 21 in your bars and drinking alcohol. And when we went to talk to Murphy's, Patrick Murphy said absolutely, and he said, aside from that, let's look at the flip side. The flip side is they're looking for somewhere to go. Why don't we open up the entire patio every Tuesday night for age 16 to 20?
Oh, they're going to do that?
And
Really?
we've done our third Tuesday, and it's growing. We had a large group of seniors last night, so we're even though it's 16
Seniors,
to
you mean
20,
high-
it seems to be
high school seniors,
they've
right?
graduated. I'm so sorry.
Wait a minute. I was going to say, if Michael and I show up, and they're going to ID us.
They will let you in.
It's
So
like
they
reverse
had,
ID. You're too old.
it's a large group of the graduating high school seniors that were there last night, and they stayed until 1 a.m. He lets them. We're there until 9 until 1. I was right
Really?
there, and they play ping pong. They do.
But not beer pong.
Nope. And that's
What is
the
it, iced tea
beauty
pong?
of this is to understand that there is a real use for ping pong balls.
Right.
Red cups actually can have sodas in them, and that you can have a wonderful time with all your friends and go home late at night drive sober, and you don't have, you can go out and have a wonderful time, and you don't
Right.
have to be a part of all that. And I love that locally that we're supporting this, and for the entire month of July, and he's thinking about August, they're doing it at absolutely no cover charge. They come in, they have DJs and tons of entertainment, and
So every
they had a
Tuesday?
wonderful, every single Tuesday night from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m.
You're there.
Wow.
And I'm there. There was 105 last night, but to hear them laughing, having a wonderful time, you realize they're looking for a way to socialize and to be out late at night, and it doesn't have to always include things
Right.
that put them in harm's way.
Right, yeah.
Good.
Well, speaking about a sense of community, David, I know we're here to talk about, in large part, your project, your
Yes.
idea for a movie that would be shot in Yorktown, right?
That's the intention, absolutely. I guess I'm going to go back a little. For a long time, I've been maybe a little dissatisfied with what you might call family films or kids' films as being, trying to appeal to only a certain type of kid or only a certain aspect of childhood, and that there's something strange that you don't necessarily find quality in those types of movies. And I would see an independent film as an adult and compare it to some of the Hollywood studio films, and there was a nice, interesting difference. And the fact that both types of films existed, I think, elevated both types of films because they had to compete with something intelligent and clever, so they couldn't just be goofy and silly on the other side. And I thought if something like that existed for kids or for families, that it would raise the overall level of both types of film. And at the same time, I was noticing, obviously, the economic state of affairs in this country, and I'm sure in a lot of towns, and you occasionally see the closed down businesses, or you see cuts in the school system, and I have kids in the school system, and as certain things go away due to the budget constraints, that added to a feeling I had that there must be something I could try to do. If the government track is not my thing, maybe there's a way that I could try to bring what I do into the system and do some good. And that's when I had the idea that maybe I could make a movie locally, and then the benefits that come to a town when a movie comes to town, especially for an extended period of time, using the local restaurants, and I mean there's a lot of things in the budget of a movie that benefit the area where the movie's shot, and so that became the plan. Is let's do that. And at the same time, I was having lunch with a friend of mine, a theater producer in the city, and he happened to mention this book to me called Hang Tough, Paul Mather. And he and his brothers read it until it fell apart when they were kids. And I'm not sure why he mentioned it to me, but on a whim, I got it from the library here, and I read it, and I said, this is it. This is everything I've been thinking about, all kind of came together in that one moment, and Tricy was the first person to come to mind.
With the lead?
As a partner to get this done.
Right.
With everything that Tricy does for the community, I thought that she would understand what I wanted to do and maybe could help. And so I met with Tricy, and I told her the idea, and I told her the various ways to try to involve and help the town. If there are scenes that take place in schools, the schools are going to get location fees. That's going to help the schools. If there's scenes that take place in the parks and on the fields, then the town's going to get location fees, and that's going to help. You need catering. Restaurants are going to get more business out of this. You need
There are scenes, I read the book in the hospital.
hospital. A lot of scenes take place in the hospital.
You were not?
No, I didn't read it in the hospital.
I thought I didn't.
And
That's another matter.
even as I go through it and I'm adapting it, I'm writing a second draft right now, and I find other ways of creating this sense of community, making one of the characters, one of the young boys, his father owns the hardware store. Well, great. Now
Right,
we get to
right.
highlight the local hardware store, and especially local businesses as opposed to maybe large franchises and chains. would be helpful as well. And even Relay for Life, which is very big here, I thought there's an excellent tie-in for that, because in the book, the boy is sick. He's got leukemia. And so there's a lot of talk of treatment and medicine and how to get him well, or well enough to take part in the baseball that's going on in the book, which is his one true love and something he does exceptionally well. Right. And that's really how this came to be. So we're now in the process of making a lot of calls to the lawyers and getting agreements signed and getting the option agreement with the author firmed up and trying to move it forward.
I could call to a lawyer right over here, actually. But I mean, would it actually say in the movie, your vision, David, is that it would say Yorktown?
Absolutely. I think that's a further a benefit, is to basically show it's a movie about a community. I think that comes behind this family. They move from place to place as the son finds other treatments and doctors, and so they're transient. They're temporarily in town to town. They are in Texas and they're in California, and I thought, maybe a nice end to this is that they find a place where they feel like they're going to stay, and that it makes the town a character, and it makes the town an appealing place to want to live. And if and if I'm seeing, in addition to a closed store, if I'm seeing a lot of for sale signs on houses, then I think it would also benefit the town to show it as a place that you want to live.
Right. Yeah, just as long as in the script you don't tell them what the property taxes are.
Exactly. We leave that out. We leave that out.
Right.
But the exciting part in talking to David is that I've known David for 10 years. I know how talented he is. It's so interesting. We have artists and talent living all through this community.
Oh, yeah.
And it absolutely thrills me beyond when they turn around and say, how can I use what I do to benefit locally? Because without a doubt, this is something that would benefit all families.
Right.
But I love it when an artist or any individual really looks and says, here's what I bring to the world. How can I do it? And he really said, he sat down and absolutely said, we have to create, when we sat down with Jonathan Gray, we sit down with the entertainment attorneys, he said, I want this to benefit our community. I want it to benefit the arts, the fields. And he said, we're going to make sure that that's how we work this project. And you had me at hello. I was like, as soon as he said, I know how talented he is, but as soon as he said, how can I use what I do and I travel all over the world doing, to do right here in our home and right here with our families, and then turn around and say benefit, besides the benefit during the production, also, post-production, that anything that comes back. And it's you don't talk to people often that absolutely spell something out like that. And this is...
It's funny, I don't know, maybe it's just the karma, but I've always, this town is, in particular, and is really has that, we started that community outreach, but it's just a town that's filled with just
good people.
Just great organizations too, and the people that are out there. If you ask, or the volunteer groups. When we've had these meetings, all our civic organizations, it's just an incredible group of people.
I told David, right when we would come in from those first few meetings, I said, you have selected the perfect community for this. Yeah. This is a community that when they realize the genuineness behind this film, and this is not a little tiny film. Right. This is something, that is really going to be something that we're so proud of, and for years to come, you're going to say, I live in that town. I feel like every hour we sit down, he ties in one more component of the town, and how much you realize this is really about the way this community feels and the way we do take in when someone is in need, and you really recognize it.
And this community, you talk about Relay for Life. It's a huge thing here, and but it's also a hell of a lot of fun. It's just it's just a great cause. But I mean, from the beginning, from Dancing with the Stars to
Yeah, right.
the historic house stores to everything. I mean, it's every bit of the, I mean, it's just a very vibrant chapter of that whole organization, and they just do a great job. I mean, we had the one weekend there, we had everything.
Remember that, everything was
We had
going on
we
at
had
once,
We had
yeah.
the show going at the community theater, and so
But you could make those type of tragedies very sad and say, please, help for the, help.
Right.
Instead, we're a community that really says, let's have fun taking care of each other.
Right.
And that's actually, this entire book is about how this community has fun and brings this family into something instead of just being sad.
Yeah, and
that's why they want to stay.
No, and then the great example, because also it was a dance for a cause too.
Yes, that's right. That was,
You know,
yeah.
and it's just been, we do have a very remarkable community, and I think it's the demographics, it's where it's located, there's certain things about Yorktown that really do make it somewhat unique.
Parades. I mean,
you know,
it just was never. And I honestly, he would just have list after list, and it's every time you'd have a draft going, it would be like, oh, you know what? We have to include this element, this particular event that happens in
Fire
Yorktown.
station.
The
Include
fire
the fire
station, the
station.
parades. It's just.
No,
you don't
you're-
have to make it up.
No,
It's here.
no. And that's what's so nice, and it's not, what's also remarkable about Yorktown, it's a really heterogeneous community. So it really, you have from, very well heeled to, the whole economic strata and culture and races is really here. It's a really very diverse community, too, which is also interesting because the kind of phenomena of the feel for the town of Yorktown you would think would be much more present in a homogeneous type of community with a
Very
homogeneous
diverse, yeah.
ethnicity or whatever culture. But it's remarkable for Yorktown that it's not that,
Right.
and
Right.
in quite significantly not that, and
And
it's
I
still,
see that as something different than any other, very few other communities in Westchester. And there is something unique that it really is that component, that when you sit down and you talk to your child when they've been in school, their best friend's father is a fireman, another one is a police officer, another one,
right.
this is, a phenomenal community.
Right,
And I could go on forever about that, but the neatest part is that that David's found a way to show those characteristics and put it up on a screen, and we are going to have that forever. And each time he sits down and goes over different scenes, I just you can't believe that anything more can keep happening.
But we should also establish, that for people watching, that David didn't just wake up and say, I'm going to make a movie.
Right,
Your credentials are that you've
Yes.
produced TV spots and stuff for like Visa and
Television commercials,
ESPN
yes.
and
Well, I
all
went
the major.
to
Yeah.
NYU Graduate Film School, and then I was an editor in the advertising commercial business, and I started directing commercials, and been doing that for 13 years.
Right.
So the production end of shooting a film is, yes, not something I'm new to
Right,
in the
right.
slightest.
And you're also, just tying it back into the local scene, you worked with somebody who's one of our newest residents in Yorktown, Ben Stiller.
Oh.
You were telling me you worked with Ben Stiller on
One
the
of the
spot, and people are talking about, not that you see him walking around the
Right.
streets, but he
Right,
lives
he's
here.
a
in
resident.
any
It
case.
was,
Yeah.
yes,
School district.
a short film that I wrote and directed and edited years ago for the VH1 Fashion Awards that he
He was in, yeah.
he was interested in. He heard the idea because he was friendly with the people at VH1 related to the Fashion Awards, and he took an interest, and so he came by and spent the afternoon really, shooting it for me.
Right.
Yes.
And do you foresee like using other, like local residents possibly as extras, or, excuse me, background actors is what they're called now, right? Background actors.
Well, frankly, I hope to be able to involve some celebrities.
Right.
Obviously, because we want the movie to be seen.
Right.
We want the movie to get made. We want to be able to raise the money and make a movie that's going to be seen and do well. And so that's one way of doing that. But I'm certainly always open from my end of what I do. I look at casting from the point of view of who's the best person, who's going to bring this role to life, and I'm happy to cast here or in New York or wherever.
Right.
Wherever we think we're going to find the best people, and I'm more than willing to use non-actors, and I've worked with a lot of non-actors, and
Right.
I've worked with a lot of athletes and people who don't necessarily have the acting chops.
Right.
And there are ways to get good performances out of people when they really connect with the material, and I
Right.
think with this material that's not difficult to do.
Right.
We're trying to hopefully find people that have a connection to this area if possible.
Right.
Someone like Ben Stiller, someone like Dave Matthews,
Dave
we talk
Matthews,
about.
right, who used to live here, yeah.
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 You had Mel Gibson down in Peekskill, right? Didn't he grow up
Mel
in-
Gibson?
I
Who was
think he
in
grew up
Peekskill?
in Peekskill.
Oh, all right.
So
Peekskill, I think.
that is the intention, but there's a lot of
local
a lot of
talent.
children and a lot of baseball teams and a lot of I mean
Right,
that
absolutely.
wasn't the other thing about the book. It's got two real strong themes, and one is the boy and his illness and the way it affects his family and the way other people come in to support him, and obviously with Relay for Life and what goes on in this town and other people that I know that live here, it immediately made me think this should happen in Yorktown. And the other thing was baseball. This book, for a children's book, I'll say, it treats baseball. The baseball scenes in this film
Yeah.
will rival
Yeah.
some of the great.
No, he does a great job in the book of describing, baseball action
Real-
for kids,
That's right.
at
But
that level. Yeah. Yeah.
You
I
get
learned
the
a lot
sense
reading.
that this boy really knows what he's doing and knows what he's talking about.
Right,
He
yes.
is a pro.
Right.
For a 12-year-old.
Right.
He's looking at the batter's stance and where his
Right.
weight is on which foot, and that tells him where to throw the ball. And I mean,
Yep.
it's really well
Cool.
done.
How to get into the,
Inside
how to get into the opposing pitcher's
baseball.
head.
Right,
and,
I think baseball, I think that's why it's a marvelous game, because it's half a chess game.
So
half
much
a-
nuance,
Yeah.
yes, between a lot of that in the book, between the pitcher and the batter and what's going on, and
Right.
it's really gets into those.
It is great, because that's the appeal of baseball.
And
That
through
is-
the illness,
is
if you
the-
don't have the muscle, you
Right,
have
the nuance. You need
exactly like you said.
strategy and I was
instinct.
I was driving, I want to say up Broad Street, and they were putting up some bunting at the beginning of the baseball season at
Brookside.
at Brookside on one of the backstops, and it was early in the morning, and the way the light was, and the guy on the ladder, and I said,
There it is.
this has to be done here. We have to shoot this here. This town loves baseball and
Right.
takes people in, and
Yep.
it all made sense to me.
No, I never really thought about it, on the forefront of the consciousness, but
It's like a
you're right.
big
I mean,
film.
Yorktown is just, I think that's one of the big appeals. It really is that kind of unique town, which is,
Because you'll hear sports a lot, but it's about so much more than sports.
Yeah.
And again, when we were looking where to move years and years ago, a friend said, "Come meet me at a soccer game over at Crompon School." And I went to that soccer game, and I saw hundreds of children. You saw, I mean, nonstop parents with their folded chairs all the way around the field. And that's the first house we looked at in Yorktown we bought. I just said that was the feeling that you wanted to raise your children, and that is different. We looked at many communities, and that was not the
No, it really does. It really has. It's not. And again, I think it's because it's so diverse.
Yes.
In terms of a lot of the culture, a lot of the.
But through that diversity, the commonness seems to be family and
Right,
children.
right, right.
Yeah,
Always,
absolutely. I agree.
always. And no
There-
matter
there's
what,
a-
that's what
right,
they
right,
put
right,
first. Everywhere you go in this community.
Yes.
I mean,
There is-
that
yeah,
seems to be the common ground, and
Right.
that's why you want to
Because
be here.
the compass that kind of drives everybody is the
Is
same.
that, and that one of the ways I really got to know David is when we were trying to do public service announcements and trying to get children into the filming business.
Right.
I knew that's what he did professionally, and he didn't. You didn't skip a beat. You said, "I'll be there hour after hour." He sat down, he trained them. He, worked on editing with them. Talked, went through what the bird's eye view. I just remember listening, going, "This is amazing." And he'd spent that, and that was because you wanted to be with those children, and they are still that same group is still constantly working on PSAs and filming, and
that's
you don't
great.
realize the seeds that you plant by taking your artistry and your talent and just saying, "I'll work with a group of kids," because they take it and go forever.
Right.
Well, and you see, even recently, there was shooting one day at Maria's, and an article the other day about something that's going to be shot in Somers, and
Right.
and you see it, people get excited and they
Oh,
get
absolutely.
proud,
Right.
and they get, it brings a lot.
Oh, yeah. And now, and you said you're almost finished writing the script, right? Is that
Another draft, yes.
right? Now, is that what's called a shooting script, or not yet?
Not yet.
Right. Because I was going to
Not
say,
yet.
if it's a shooting script, right, you basically would have to have the locations, like
Right.
specifically in town where you'd be shooting,
But
wouldn't
you
you?
have
Or-
some of that.
necessarily.
Well, I think once you have that final shooting draft, then yes, you break it down
Right.
into scenes and you start working on
Figuring out
locations.
scouting out locations. yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's
such an
already
interesting
going.
process.
It already goes through my head. I drive around. It's hard to not
Yeah.
look at houses and look at certain streets because I know certain scenes and where they want to take place, and
Right.
you're looking for the right look that gives it the kind of feeling that I want the film to have.
Well, the funny thing about it, too, is when you read the book, and it is from that era, I think you said he wrote it in the 70s, was it, or something? right?
1972.
Yeah, but it definitely has a Leave It to Beaver quality about it. The settings, I'm saying it's really Americana. And the funny part of that is the kid's name, Paul Mather, the guy who played Leave It to Beaver
There you
was
go,
Jerry
Jerry
Mathers,
Mathers.
right? So I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me if in the author's mind he maybe was a little subconscious about that, because it feels a little bit like a Leave It to Beaver extended episode, it's with the family values and,
Right.
the
And the neighborhood
crisis.
and the
yeah, I mean, this is
boys, yes.
much more serious,
Right.
obviously,
It's
life-threatening
got some more serious
crisis.
tones, but
Yeah.
that's the other interesting thing I think about family films. Would this be a family film? And I would say yes, but not by intention. What makes a film not a family film? Language, violence,
Right.
sexual themes, things like that. And this story happens to not have those things,
Right.
but it doesn't make it something only for children just because it doesn't have those themes, just because its rating might be G or PG,
Right.
because it doesn't contain those elements that give movies higher ratings,
Right.
doesn't mean that it's not for anybody, for everybody. I feel like anybody would enjoy this story and enjoy this film.
Right. But the thing is, too, are you working into the script, David, like what you've been talking about? And although you're not ready to show it, you have a trailer. And in the trailer, a lot of what keeps coming back up, recurring, is the word community.
Yes.
And is that something you're working into the script, where the community comes together, maybe a little bit more than what I read in the book, to
Well,
help, with the family? Or?
Yes, I think
Yeah.
in the book, it was certainly a different time. There was no internet,
Right.
cell phones, that sort of thing. In the book, his doctor encourages him to tell his story by giving him a tape recorder,
Right.
and it really becomes a personal thing for him. Whereas I think nowadays, a kid that age is going to tell his story. Maybe he would do it with a blog. Maybe he would do it
Yeah,
on the
right,
internet.
right.
And this is the approach I decided to take, and it allows other people in. And there were all these team members, and I felt that they had parents, and their parents could be involved as well, and there could be a lot more support, and that the family didn't need to be as isolated as they seem to feel in this story, that the sense of community is also
It's
what
right there.
helps
Yeah.
them.
Right. Right.
And one of the interesting things when we spoke with the entertainment attorney is he just kept saying this is a phenomenal concept. It is very different from shooting films. He
Right.
said you actually have a film within a film. He said what you're doing, the process of working with your own community, using your own community, benefiting your own community, building this movie around where you live
Right.
is something
Is- yeah,
different
that
than
is
anyone.
unusual, yeah.
He said, really from the get-go, that's a whole documentary in
Right,
itself
right.
because this is
True.
something very unique.
Unusual,
And
yeah,
he just
that's
said this is, for them to sit down and really not just thumbs up, but say this is, and in New York City, that was, first of all, such an experience for me, like just to sit
Right.
there and you walk through and you see every festival winner, all their posters hanging up in the hallways, and then to sit down and for him to look at David and say, this is unique. This is, you have to do this, and to explain what it takes going in, and then what you can do with in-kind services, and what you can do to make sure you're under your, $1 million mark, and different. It was just
Right.
very interesting to hear that.
Yes,
but
well, it struck me as, big studios make movies and big investors make independent movies, and that happens. And I thought, when is a town has never made a movie, you know, so the big studios gain from the movies that they make. Well, what if a town made a movie, and what if the town could gain from that movie?
right.
And that just seemed like the way to go.
I'm going to sound real corny because I actually, you know, what strikes me is I'm a cancer survivor, and one of the big things that, you know, gets you through that was my whole group of friends. And, you know, and I actually was fortunate. One of my other friends had kind of pioneered that. He didn't make it, but you know, when I had this whole set of friends, and a lot of them that, you know, you know, but that, you know, a lot of the healing process is having,
Right.
you know, when they have, I was impressed with the Dance for a Cause, and I guess the story there was a lady had a severe form,
Yeah, her aunt had that condition.
adrenal cancer.
Yes, right.
But and you know, she's kind of beating the odds. But I wasn't that surprised, because if you look at the community, and the thing is you know, interesting. I don't know, you know, to maybe sound corny, I don't know the story very well. But on the other hand, you know, there you know, a lot of healing on a personal level takes place through a community, because you really can't do it yourself anyhow.
Well,
You gotta
and we
get-
know, we see it firsthand in our community with
all the
very
time, yeah.
dear friends. You see it.
Yeah.
And you do see, again, that it's not just the person that has the illness, it's their parents, it's their siblings.
Right.
That, and especially in this case where you've just moved from hospital to hospital, and you don't let yourself become close. And that's the really interesting concept, is it seems to be the first time that they really let the community, and not because of them, but because of their child,
but
that the community comes into their home.
But you know, the real irony is the healing goes both ways.
Right.
You know, it's not just, you know, it's like
right.
you know, someone like that can heal a community.
Absolutely.
You know, and where
All right.
you know, where a community can.
That's
you
that
know,
rally, of course.
Yeah.
Of course,
And
that
that's actually, you know, kind of, you know, when the focus is on this, on the patient, it's one thing, but the patient actually gives out a lot back. You know, heals the community.
Especially in this book, you're gonna
yeah.
look
Yeah,
back
that's
on
true.
your words,
Yeah.
and you're gonna when you read that book or see this film, you're gonna say, I said it exactly the way it is,
Yeah,
because that's
and there are
the truth.
portions of when I was reading it, I mean, and it doesn't take much to get me going anyhow, but it was very poignant, you know, it's really, I was choking up in some of the.
Many.
That's all we do.
Yeah.
Yes,
Right.
and I've read it and reread it, and
Yeah.
I'm going through different chapters constantly, even out of context, just
Right.
a 3-page section, and some of the impact of some of the things that happen, some of the things that people do for one another or say to one another.
The nurse, his
That's
relationship with
right.
the nurse and things like that,
Absolutely.
yeah.
There's a lot
And
of
they seem
great
tough, and then all of a
relationships.
sudden
Yes.
That's
you're
right,
like,
yeah.
yeah, it's beautiful. It's beyond beautiful. And watching, you know, and really listening to what David's doing with what you've already read, and really bringing it home. I'm so excited about it.
And we were talking, David, I mean, the trailer is really good, and it shows a lot of Yorktown places, but like I said, maybe not right this moment,
Yes.
but maybe at some point people would be able to see it, right? You have to make some changes.
I have to make some changes. I really made it just as in advertising, what they would call a mood piece to
Right.
get people to understand what we're trying to do. And so in that way, I found pictures where I could, in some cases, not my own,
Right.
and I found music where I could that would evoke what I wanted it to evoke. And so once I have it all
Cleared, right?
cleared and
Right. And
Lawyers,
you know
the
about that.
lawyers.
then I will
Share it a little.
we will share it. We will create a space for that on the internet where people can see
But
it.
people, if they're interested anyhow in knowing more about you, your website's thedavidlevin.com, right?
Yes,
THEDavidLevin.
thedavidlevin.com shows my commercial work mostly. My short with Ben Stiller's on there.
Right.
Some of my I have a little family band at home. Some of that stuff.
And the last piece we haven't really touched on is, since you're not going to a Hollywood studio, or where's the money going to come from?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, that's the point we're at now. Is we're gonna start to push to try and raise these funds, and we're going to try and raise the money if we can locally,
Right.
and then we'll start increasing the size of that radius to other people that maybe do that sort of thing or typically invest in film. And
Right. We'll have to hit up some of the Yorktown 1%ers.
There we go.
Try to find them.
You have a list?
That would be worth a lot of money.
We're
though.
always looking for that magic list, but this is one of those areas that there actually sometimes are investors that look for unique film opportunities. So
Right.
we're kind of keeping all the doors open and.
And it is a low-budget film,
Right.
and while that being said, I'm sure the budget would sound like a lot of money to a lot of people. It's a low-budget film that has, we think, a lot of universal appeal and a very large audience
Right.
that would appreciate it. And that being said, the movie stands to do well. The movie stands to make back its money. And,
Right.
and so while films tend to be risky investments, obviously we're biased, but we tend to feel like this isn't that risky of an investment. It's powerful material, as you know. You've
Right.
read the book.
Yep.
And so maybe it's not as risky. Maybe it's actually a good investment.
Right. And Tricy, you're actually a producer on the movie, right?
I am a co-producer. I'm learning all kinds of amazing things, but just the most wonderful part is really watching talent.
Create something, yeah.
Create something,
out
but
of
create
nothing, yeah.
something good and including your community.
Right.
That's
While
that
while
was the
Tricy
point.
might not have film experience as a
She's a great salesman.
as a co-producer, well, that's just it. I mean, her
enthusiasm,
enthusiasm and her
yeah.
involvement in the
Right.
community
Right.
is
Oh,
what
yeah.
is necessary here, and that's what Tricy brings to this, and that's
I-
just
you
as
can see the
valuable as a
genuine-
producer that had film experience who might not have all of that.
She's got that on steroids, right?
Right.
And by the way, Tricy, you can play a nurse.
Yeah. You would not want to see me act. I am the behind the scenes, but it's
The
a
nurse is
very
too crotchety.
genuine.
Okay,
right,
all
I don't
right.
think Tricy could get there.
It's exciting and it's fun. Just like we've seen really neat things come through Yorktown. This is something I haven't seen.
No, you're right.
And it just has so many good values.
Right.
And that is what I really feel like we're about.
And when we get going talking about this and our plans, we get way ahead of ourselves and think, why we could do this one, and then what will we do next? What will be the next one? And we'll create the Yorktown Film Company, and this will be a place where we'll make
That's cool. That's
we'll
a
make
cool idea.
we'll
Right.
make
That's
these
a-
types
yeah.
of stories
No,
about
that's a
families,
great
about
idea.
communities. There are so many great stories that can be told, and if we can pull this one off, then maybe it's worth our while to keep going.
Yeah, no, that's true. My previous life, I worked with the Hollywood studios, so it's sort of funny, and that now I'm working in the community, and now somebody's making a movie here,
bet.
and as I probably don't have to tell you, you're better off not working with them,
Well,
because very quickly you'll have nothing to do with your own movie.
I'm not sure that it's their fault, but they have to look at a lot of things and a lot of numbers and a lot of, right?
I mean, they
And-
do an amazing job. I
They
know.
do,
It's on a
and-
whole different scale. Yeah.
Right, so I think we have the benefit of
Yeah,
not having
right.
to think about those things and worry about those things, and it allows us to focus on the story and the characters and what it's really about.
Yeah.
But being this close to New York City, it's amazing what you have access to. The talent just in talking to, again, the entertainment attorneys.
Oh,
and
yeah.
And even
You-
crew, I think a lot of people that
Yes.
work in that industry live in these surrounding areas, and I would like a list of that too. I would like
Yeah.
to find the way to get as many resources for this film as possible from this area, and if that means crew, and if that means, I would love to do that.
He's actually looking to make a big investment. I think it was in Orange County on a Hollywood East.
Oh, really?
On a big site up in Orange County. Had a fire up there not too long ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Huh,
But they were,
interesting.
yeah. So and there is it's funny. I mean, it's funny you bring it up because there's a lot of these areas just right outside of New York that are really ripe for
Talent.
and for actually production companies, because what happens is I guess that there's a lot of the union.
Unions, correct.
If
The
you're within a
guilds
certain,
and the- yes.
if there's a certain radius.
The
and then-
zone, yes,
right,
it's
and
called
if you
the
go out-
zone.
Yeah, and if you go,
is that what it is?
yeah, and if actually you're outside that
Right.
zone,
It changes your,
so I think we're.
You don't have to adhere to all of the.
Right, and I think we're outside.
we are outside of the
that
zone, yeah.
Right.
So, because it's just curious, I've had some chatter about trying to one of the things to bring into Yorktown, if we had a site big enough, would be a production.
Well, what about the
Production
Food
company.
Emporium?
Yeah.
That's pretty big.
Well, I know, I really,
There you
I
go,
think
get in
they
there.
use.
You're
to a
talking about
soundstage.
a soundstage and a film studio, yes. You need a pretty big
yeah,
site, yeah.
You know, I was up in Beacon over the weekend. They have this museum, the DIA. It's a former Nabisco box printing factory. It
Like a
is the
warehouse.
hugest space I've ever seen in this area. It is that's the kind of thing you would need, this
Right.
huge former factory building.
Yeah, and there are places around here, and,
Yeah.
but I know there's interest in, that people are looking for.
Right.
And you have to open yourself. This is that time, just like David was saying, with the economy, with things changing, sometimes you have to go outside that box, and you have to say what is different about Yorktown. And one of the things, like you said, is we're that close to the city, but we're outside of those lines.
Yeah,
There's
we're-
lots
we're-
of
yeah,
different,
yeah,
you always are looking but this, I mean, to me, had nothing to do with that originally. Those are just things that benefit the process. But when you really stop and say what is a business that's not happening here that could
Right.
benefit
And that's,
everyone?
yeah, that's right.
And I
yeah.
love the idea of it coming back to benefit the arts and the fields for our community.
Right.
And that's just something that you could never get enough of.
Right.
We know that.
Right.
Right? We could
right.
never have enough arts
No,
and
I mean,
enough field space.
Right.
you strive to do it, and it's, what's so remarkable about this town is there's just so many of these different organizations that are out there, including
Right.
your foundation
Right.
as well,
Right.
and it's just, and I tell people, I'm kind of fortunate, I got this pulpit at this point, I can kind of, so you can shed, part of what I feel obligated to do is start to shed light on all this
Right,
stuff.
open eyes. We have Yorktown Stage.
Yeah,
We have
just to-
things that other communities don't, have no idea what it would be like
And
to
just
have.
to remind people that they exist and that
Yes,
there's
I
talent
agree.
out there. You have the Jeffrey Beach Foundation,
Yes.
you have the
Yeah,
kids
that's
here.
right.
I mean, you really
talent.
got, it's
Talk
really.
about planting seeds.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the things that those children are going to go on to do because of that opportunity?
Yeah,
There you go.
Yes, that's right.
I used to I have a summer house up in the Adirondacks, and it was a little town, but it's changed over decades, and now unfortunately, it's not what it used to be. When I was a kid, there was the square dances at the little casino
Yeah,
building,
that's right.
and there was talent night, and there was,
Yeah.
but there was it was baby boom time, there was a bunch of kids there. But, that's something that's never, that kind of charm, and,
Yep.
never leaves you, is that, because
Right.
it was really a charming time.
Oh, yeah.
And,
that's right.
and the thing is that Yorktown has that.
We do.
Oh, yeah.
We do. We have the talent show for the children.
We-
They
yeah,
have
we have-
dances.
The charm exists there, and the thing is,
You're right.
when the focus is on the pall that hangs over everybody at this
Right.
point in time, it's bad. So you got to kind of wipe that away.
I like your
and-
pulpit.
and
Yep.
start focusing on what we really have, and and I love it. I mean, the sense of community, it is the healing. Any of these things go both ways, and we have had a town that we've had a lot of tragedies in this town,
Right.
and we've had a lot of accidental deaths of very young adults.
But you don't let that sound, I mean, that's what your community rallies around to try to make better.
Right, we have that sense.
We do.
We have that sense of obligation. We have that sense of tragedy of those things beyond, beyond the intimate, personal people involved in it.
Right.
But we understand as a community that's tragic for all of us.
Absolutely.
And so,
Yeah.
the thing is that we really and what
That's
we've been.
family.
Yeah. And
Right.
what we're trying to do is,
Right.
was ask, and, when you did those surveys, you're starting to get to idea of where we need to start to focus as a community, because this is really, this stuff shouldn't happen
Right.
to us, and we have such a great resource of people, and it's just people, it's talent,
Right.
it's in the natural beauty of the area. And its location is just, you're within to the city or near the shore. It's just, it has all these great things going
That's
for
what
it.
I kept telling David. I said, people are going to see this movie and say, there's no such town as that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
fictional.
Because
The Forgotten Valley.
It's really that, that
Oz.
pleasant,
Well,
that, what do
you
you call that?
And you read a book this old, and the kids are walking from here to there, and you can take
Right,
a
they're
cynical
walking
point of
everywhere.
view, and you can say, oh, it's not like that anymore, and the kids can't walk into town and do things on their own because people are afraid and
Right.
everything's worse or something, and
everybody.
then you look
Well, the
around and you say,
feel.
well, it's not really, and people can walk from
Right,
here to
and they
there.
should.
They
They
Yeah,
should walk,
and a
right.
lot, a lot of it is,
Especially at your-
a
on your
lot of it is
baseball
what we,
field.
a lot of it is the rhetoric we preach too, you know, it really is. I mean, if you emphasize, you know, that's.
Emphasize stranger danger.
Yeah,
then-
and you know, what's really remarkable about this town, again, I sound like a broken record, but all these different, you know, travel organizations, all these different groups and all these, you know, you got such a, you know, there's such a,
Safety net.
yeah, and there's a, yeah,
Yeah.
it's an aura of
Yep.
York, you know, and there's, it's funny because physical things and physical places can produce that. You know, you can go into
Right.
a magnificent building and have an aura, you can have or, you know,
Right.
I'm a hot rodder, so you give me a nice looking Ferrari, it's got a,
Right, right.
you know, but I mean, I'm
But
saying,
and you're talking about the concerts,
but
you
you
know,
have
that
a-
the Lions do. Think
Yep.
about that feeling. I mean, that was just the other night, the movie night. We did a
Yeah.
outdoor
Yeah.
family movie
Right,
night.
right.
It was the most
Yeah.
phenomenal feeling to see hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of families on blankets eating
Sure,
popcorn
it's-
and watching an outdoor movie.
yeah, and it was from grandmothers to the
Oh, yeah, that's-
grandchildren
yeah.
to everybody.
And
you
it
know.
was like,
every
and I
year.
did, I had my sister was in town with her children, and her boys said, how come we don't have this in, you know, in our town? And,
Right.
you know, you just realize that sometimes we take things for granted. And I think maybe seeing it on a big screen, you'll say, oh my goodness,
maybe
we
the
have
outdoor-
a community that
Yeah,
has this
yeah,
amazing
yeah,
Relay
yeah,
for Life and
right,
outdoor
right, right,
movies and outdoor concerts.
No,
and-
the real life,
Very.
yeah, and the real life for life thing is like a phenomenon of
Very.
itself. I mean, because it just has that. I mean,
Festive.
the you know the whole thing from everything they do is just has this, you know, it's a real excitement. in town.
Right. And yet
it draws
very
everybody
meaningful,
in
but
and-
joyous and not, you know, even
yeah.
through tears and laughter. And that is really what a community is about. That's what a family is about.
And if you
that
didn't have those things, yeah. And that's why, you know, Yorktown is unique, and I think it's got a lot of different factors that, you know,
It deserves a movie.
No, yeah, I was gonna
I
Well,
agree.
and that's our target,
Yeah.
is that we hope to be able to raise the funds and start the pre-production process and the casting and everything through the course of the fall.
Right.
And maybe into the winter, depends how long it takes us.
Right.
But if we can be shooting in the spring or the beginning of the summer, when school gets out and everything looks the way it looks now, and shoot at Relay for Life and incorporate that into the story,
Right.
give
Yeah.
that a scene,
Right.
it's perfectly appropriate. It would make a wonderful part of the movie. And
No, and the outdoor movie could be Hank Paul Allen next
There you
time.
go. Wouldn't that be great? And
maybe
it's a
the
movie you can
following,
show
yeah.
to everyone.
And by the way, speaking, Supervisor Grace, of the community and charities, it occurs to me, even though we do this at the beginning, we should mention that, especially if you're a golfer, April 23rd, there's a memorial scholarship
August. August.
tournament.
April.
What did I say? April. I said April, right. You're trying to tell me that.
I don't.
Right.
You may get me fooled.
July 23rd. Anyhow, there's what's called the Richard Levin Memorial Scholarship Tournament that the Mohansic pro, Skip Marini,
Skip Marini,
was also the coach at the high school for golf, was also the YC golf.
YC, yeah.
Skip has done a great job pulling this together. Rich Levino, who was the coach of the varsity golf team, was a teacher at the high school. Actually, Harrison had him, a great guy. And so Skip Marini took it upon himself to put together this memorial golf tournament. That's July 23rd. You can contact Skip at Mohansic at the tournament's at Mayo Pack. And then August 6th, we were talking about Augie's. Audrey, one of the owners of Augie's with Sal, you know, has a daughter who has autism, and she's putting on a benefit for Autism Speaks, which is a golf tournament August 6th. And then I'm going to put in a plug for our foundation. Columbus Day, we have our golf tournament that, you know, benefits the community through the Harrison Apar Foundation. I have Howard Johnson confirmed. Remember the Met Howard Johnson?
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Joe.
yeah, yeah,
He's
yeah.
coming,
Okay.
and we're working on another former Yankee who's very well known. But anyhow, and then we should mention, you mentioned the Justin Veach Fund, and Jeff Veach does a great. He has Bernie Williams.
Right, they're playing with Bernie Williams.
Bernie
at the
Williams
Paramount.
is coming to the Paramount for the Justin Veach Fund. That was a great
Wow.
get, you know, great idea.
when's that?
In the fall, it's like October, November, yeah. So Bernie Williams, the former center fielder of the Yankees, who's a musician, you know, and so those are examples of what we're talking about. You know,
Yeah, no, I tell you, it's really, it's humbling to be, being supervisor. I mean, it's really, it's the nicest part about it. It's just,
It
it's
is.
just
Well, we were
what this
saying, I
guy
mean,
is.
and sometimes you have to hear different complaints, different things, but when it all comes down to it, at the end of the night, this is what kind of community,
Yeah, it
Yorktown
really
is.
is. It's a great town, but,
right?
right, it really
Yeah,
is. And a lot going on. And again, it's just very important to constantly, you can't get tired of beating that drum. And
right. And when you get ready to need permits, you know who to talk to.
There we go.
Right, you can go to the supervisor's office. Yeah.
Well, you're the first ones
Casting.
to
I
know
thought you were
this
gonna
is,
say casting.
this is the
Right.
beginning. There you go.
Yeah, you'd be great then. Yeah. And we'll dust off the red carpet. So anyhow, thanks to Alliance to Save Kids President and CEO and movie producer Tricy Cushner, and to David Levin, independent filmmaker, and best of luck, right?
Yeah, great having you. When you're further on down the line and
Yes,
you want to
of
come back
course.
and give us kind of an update,
Absolutely.
come on back, and
Yeah, right.
it'll be a lot of
This
fun.
is the first step.
It's always great seeing you, though.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This is
So-
perfect.
Yeah, thank you. And you have been watching Grace Notes with Yorktown Supervisor Michael Grace. I'm Bruce Apar of Chase Media Group. Thank you for watching, and be sure to catch us next time and every time, because, as you've heard for the last hour, Yorktown is your town. Thank you.